Have you ever opened up a report or seen a graph and you're like, what am I even looking at? What is this set of numbers and tables? And there's really no clear point to what you actually see on the page. And you know, a lot of effort went into creating that, and yet it's not helping you see anything differently or make a different decision. In this video, I'll share principles and tips to help you transform dull data into captivating visual stories that'll help inform, educate, and inspire action. My goal is to equip you with skills to present data in a way that resonates and sticks. Before creating charts, ask questions about your audience. What interests them about this data? What's their level of data literacy? What action do you want them to take? Tailor your approach, I tailor everything, for maximum relevance. For instance, visualizing like detailed technical data for an IT infrastructure team of engineers versus middle school kids. So you're gonna have different strategies. Focus your message. Resist the urge to overload each graph with every possible metric just because you can. Restrain yourself. The idea is to focus on the metrics that matter for the stage of growth you're in, the industry you're in, and the message that you're trying to come across and ask someone to do something. You can avoid pitfalls through intentional design. Steer clear of the hazardous traps of cluttered visuals. Remove chart junk that distracts from your message. Declutter for clarity. Maybe combine all those other lines into others versus your key focus. Is it our average versus our global average? Is it a city versus everywhere? So just throwing all the data on the screen really does look like a bunch of spaghetti hitting the wall. Lack of context is a huge problem I see in the graphs that I come across. If there is terminology that's not clear to absolutely everyone, you need to define it. You need to say what those acronyms are. You need to spell it out. That graph may travel far and wide, and if the information can go with it, that'll help communicate your vision to new viewers. We want to avoid, it went up, numbers went up, sales went up 18%. That doesn't tell us enough. Numbers go up, numbers go down, but what is the context? So compared to what? Compared to when? Compared to who? So is that year over year? Sales are up 18%, and year over year last year, they were up 25%. So even though they're up 18%, it's not good news. Tips to take your skills up a notch? Limit your color palette. I love colorful things for sure, but it's best to use them sparingly because they're going to be competing for attention with other things. So minimize it to 3 to 4 maximum. Maybe it's just one color in gray or a gradient that shows the intensity of something, but focus it down and don't go too crazy. Strategic chart choosing. So you want to match the visual display to the story you want to convey. And there are a lot of different ways to show orders and rankings, and you can use the amazing visual vocabulary from Financial Times, and Andy Kribble did a great Tableau version of that as well that you can check out so you know and what time to use what chart. There's this set of different scenarios, so you want to see a correlation between 2 or more variables, and you can see diverging bar charts, spine charts. Some of these you may not have even heard of, and some are more effort than they're worth. And also there are a few that are still simple. They just have kind of a different name, and it helps spur the imagination on how you might arrange your line chart so you can see like a surplus deficit filled line where they have the positive is one color and the negative below 0 is a different color, so you can quickly see something. So it's a little bit of a way to spark that creativity when we know the options that are possible. For key points, make them stand out. You can use fonts, colors, annotations, labels to draw attention to those key points for the user. You don't want to have them searching and doing work to discover hidden like a paleontologist uncovering dinosaur bones where that key data point is. Do the work for them and draw them there. All of this is really about data storytelling and sequencing your story. So guiding them on a journey from A to B is super helpful. You may even have multiple iterations of that graph where you show an overview that has all sorts of tiny things, and it's hard to see individual things, but you can see the trend. And then you may exclude some of those super high outliers so you can focus down in on the important subtleties between your competitive landscape. Iterating for impact. So when I've had clients for dashboards and reporting systems, we would definitely test with general managers and managers of floor employees and seeing the two different perspectives. And we would go through weekly iterations to get them from a prototype of a graph to something they can use every day, all the time, whether that's in email, logging into a laptop, or on mobile, and what would work for those users, and get to a place where it's ready to have an impact on our business and their role. One of my favorite books and PDFs that was out there was from InfoActive, which has since been acquired, but it was about data and design, so no surprise there. There were a couple of amazing chapters. So one of them covered, what do you want a graph to say? Determine your message. Began with a clear and focused message to create compelling, well-organized visual argument, really. I know a lot of you are going to skip that step, as do I often, and you just end up with something that came out by default. That's okay to explore and then see what you might be able to create first. But when you're really trying to have a key graph or a key message in a presentation, you want to really think through the questions you're trying to answer. It's important to be specific. So your message should be concise, short, sweet, to the point. You want to dig deeper. So you want to think, why is that? Why is that the case? So what? What is the answer to those questions so you can get deeper? Otherwise, it's like, yeah, well, duh. I don't know what the Gen Z equivalent is for duh, but that is basically whatever is the obvious and the traits. We want to avoid that. We want to go deeper and cut right to the heart of the matter. Step one, you have deconstructing a chart. You have breaking down the chart. What is on a chart? You have the y-axis, the x-axis. You have a line series graph, perhaps. You have a tooltip where it's a little box that when you're hovering over something you see. There's an annotation that's always there. You also have a legend with what it's describing there, as well as a caption, and most importantly is a title and subtitle. So it's the first thing your viewer is probably going to have their eyes drawn to, and it's going to tell them what to expect. It might ask them a question. It might give a key takeaway. It might give key context for what the data covers or doesn't cover. So do not waste effort on making a graph unless you can create an awesome title that will bring them in and tell them why they want to see it. Just like you do the same thing with a YouTube thumbnail and title. You got to get them there, so make them click, make them stay for the rest of the graph. All right, top follows in data design. So highly recommend following storytelling with data. There's a great book out there if you don't have it yet. They have a great LinkedIn follow on the website's awesome. There's a particular space on the website I would like to call out, which is their graph makeovers. So it's really hard when you're learning data to really understand how to move from just a table of all these things to something that communicates a key message and that draws that user to take action. And they do a great job of doing that through a step-by-step process, so you can see what's okay, what's a little bit better, what's a lot better, and then what is absolutely clear and compelling and you could use in a presentation. Duarte Group is another excellent follow. They have a book called Resonate, which I can't recommend enough. That's more towards the presentation of data and how to get that to stick with your audience. Nathan Yao is a great follow online. There's a number of guides for different scenarios with data that you can walk through. So if you're encountering a certain situation, it is a great way to help you walk through what you should do. Edward Tufte's 4 guidelines in data visualization are: 1, graphical excellence. So, all right, yeah, do a good job. 2, visual integrity. 3, maximizing the data to ink ratio. And 4, aesthetic elegance. So much like the historical example you'll see often of the Napoleon March or the other ones we have that are even more beautiful with their design, this is really coming from that artistic space, but there's something to get here on maximizing that data to ink ratio and being efficient with what we're trying to describe, and also to add a little bit of that artistic element here, so we're not just thinking in robot tables, and that we can add a little bit of beauty and ease with how we consume the information. All right, so examples. So there are a lot of fun examples to get inspired by in graphs. You read The Economist. It has the sort of red lines and red headlines and black text and one other color maybe, but very monochrome. Same with eMarketer, has a very similar style, has kind of a little bit longer of a caption, but they've got a very clear title and date, and they'll tell you what ad revenue share was by company for a certain range. And then what is that as a percentage of total digital ad spending? It can get a little more playful with some other groups. So Chart.R, they get a little more playful in the colors and the logos of the companies that were there, but still pretty straightforward graphs for the most part. They have great titles with that key takeaway. So Spotify has extended its lead in the music streaming wars. So I know what I'm supposed to get out of reading that graph, and then I can see the Spotify line way ahead of all those others. And that just reinforces that message that they gave us in the title. Style guides versus design systems. Style guides inform creatives on how to represent the brand authentically, and design systems guide UI UX professionals in creating consistent digital experiences. Style guides have logos, fonts, color palettes, and templates. Design systems have reusable components, grid systems, and usability guidelines. Both style guides and design systems ensure brand consistency. It's just different context. Practically, you may be using software like Tableau right now, and you're like, well, how does this really look? Are they just actually going to publish this as it is out to the world or to a company? And you can do that, and you can do a lot of design work within it and its own tools. And also, you can get UI kits in Figma for Tableau and have it do it that way. So for the most part, the power of Tableau is that it allows general business type users to create dashboards like me without hiring necessarily a designer. However, obviously there is a lot of value in having a design lens and being able to create something that is more aesthetically beautiful and easy to interact with and efficient. So there's actually a lot of fun ones you can go out and explore and see, like the classic NASA one with the worm logo from the 70s and 80s that if you look at old space shuttle type things, you'll see out there. They have an amazing one. They actually did a crowdfunding campaign a while ago, I think, where you could actually get the guidelines printed out. That was pretty cool. There are sites like brandingstyleguides.com that have the ones that have been freely available. A lot of companies do not have those public. They only share those with their advertising agencies and other vendors and partners as they are creating, email campaigns and things like that. But some have become public in the past, and the ones may or may not be recent, but it's fun to explore and see what they're actually creating as their style guide. You can go there and download some. There's also some new tools like Frontify.com has a lot of startups and big companies on a more digital, interactive, and customizable brand guidelines. So really excited for how that makes it even more seamless to go from the structure of what's approved to actually creating sites and creative for advertising as well. And one more thing to think about too, and it is in a way outside of the scope of data in design. In another way, it's deeply embedded in it, and it's that tone. So what is the tone of the text on your graph? Does it match the seriousness of the situation? So we want to have the tone to match the vibe of the brand, of the context, and everything like that. MailChimp has an awesome brand guide for voice and tone that I definitely recommend checking out for that sort of irreverent and playful and fun tone, so you can see how that might be organized and how different that is than something like a bank's, which you want to be very trustworthy and serious, but not too boring, have a little lifestyle component to it. So just thinking through that tone of the text will help make your graph overall match the context to communicate the things you want to communicate.